All right, guys. So tonight's notes are entitled The French and Indian War. So, again, we're trying to add some context to what was going on in colonial America in this 18th century. What is happening in the colonies immediately leading up to the American Revolution. Now, it's important to understand um, or remember these navigation acts. The navigation acts you guys did for notes last night, and that we are acting out with our game in class. And the navigation acts are going to make the colonists unhappy. But problems with Great Britain are really going to start getting worse after the French and Indian War. So, in terms of our broader understanding of American history, we need to know that the issues between colonists and Great Britain are really going to get heated up following this French and Indian War. And we're going to look at why that is with these notes. So, first, we need to understand some context related to the French and Indian War. Um, the French and Indian War is really just one part of a much bigger war that was going on. Britain and France were at war with each other, and fighting took place in North America, in Africa, Europe, and India. And this is really one of the world's first world wars, not like World War I, World War II, but like a war fought all over the world, okay? And it's between these two great colonial rivals. Britain and France have really established themselves as the major colonial powers in the world up to this point. Spain had kind of lost some of its influence internationally. And so these two rivals are vying for power globally. So who fought in the French and Indian War and where? Well, it was fought in America, and we have two sides. On one side, we have the British and the British colonists fighting against the French and their Indian allies. So that's why we call it the French and the Indian War. From the colonist perspective, they're amongst the British, so they're fighting against the French and their Indian allies. Remember, the French had a much better relationship in general with the Indians than the British did. There were some Indians who fought on the side of the British and the colonists, but for the most part, just to keep it simple, it's the British and their colonists versus the French and their Indian allies. Okay? So, why are they fighting in North America? Well, we should know by now that if we're talking about conflict between colonists and Native Americans in North America, the main cause is going to be land. Specifically, we're talking about land in two places with the French and Indian War. One is the area what we call the Midwest in the United States today. So we're looking at places around the Great Lakes like Michigan and Illinois and Ohio, especially the Ohio and Ohio River Valley. These are going to be really important territories that both sides are going to be fighting for control over. The second piece of territory is in southern Canada, just north of the Great Lakes. They're also fighting over that territory. And one of the main reasons is because both sides, both the British and the French, want to control the fur trade that is coming out of these territories. So they're vying for control of the land in the Midwest, in the Great Lakes and Ohio River Valley regions in North America. And they're also vying for control over this fur trade that the Indians dominated, that most of the fur is coming out of this region. So what happened in the French and Indian Wars? There's lots of fighting. Fighting is taking place all over North America. Most of the, or some of the most important battles took place in Pittsburgh, which is in western Pennsylvania, and Quebec, which is in southern Canada. Overall, the English are going to win the war in America, and the English are going to win the war in many other places as well. So the English come out on top in the broader war, and the English and their colonists come out on top in the specific French and Indian War. So what are the long-term results? What are the consequences of this war? First of all, England is going to gain a lot of land, including their control of Canada and the Ohio River Valley. Huge pieces of land that the English now control in North America, west of their original colonies, places that had originally been controlled by France. On the flip side of that, France loses all of its North American colonies. It will gain some land back, but that's not until later. It's important to understand France is basically pushed out of North America at this point. Because of that, the Indians, who had often been aligned with the French, no longer have France as an ally to help them deal with issues with the British. For the colonists, they're now going to feel a lot safer since France is gone. Remember, these American colonists view themselves as British subjects. British are rivals with the French. So now one of their enemies, who's kind of right next door to the west of them in the colonies, is gone. The only other enemy really left standing in this area now is the Native Americans. Many of the colonists, many Americans are going to fight in this war. People like George Washington are going to gain really valuable military experience in the French and Indian War. Experience that will come in handy when they have to fight a much bigger war coming up. Another result that we're going to see is that England's national debt is going to double as a result of this broader war with France. So the French and Indian War is going to contribute. The English have to pay all the money for troops and for supplies, for ships, for guns, for ammunition, to fight this world war against the French. And so they have to go into debt to pay for all of these things. And the final result we're going to mention, and this is going to be a little bit of foreshadowing, France is going to be really angry after this. They're going to look at the French still as a rival, and they're going to want revenge going forward. They're going to seek opportunities to get revenge against the British. Okay? Tonight, or now that you finish your notes, your response question, you're going to imagine yourself as a member of the English Parliament, and your national debt has just skyrocketed. It is doubled as a result of this war. So you need to come up with a plan. How are you going to deal with this issue? How are you going to make up some of this national debt? When you answer that question, make sure you print off your notes and have them ready for class tomorrow.